Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this special live event. Since we haven't talked about this subject for quite some time, almost a year now, I think. So today we're going to have the topic of ET contact. Like, what does that mean for us? How does this show up in our lives? What are the symptoms or the signs that you can know that you're having it? And like, what can you do with it, basically? Like, that's the most important part. Because like everyone has it to a certain extent, especially who are watching it right now, but many people are not aware of it. And higher vibrations is connecting with us right now. Hello, higher vibrations. We can't hear you yet, but at least we're live. Okay, cool. So yeah, like everyone who has a question or wants to share their experiences, please do so in the chat box right now. Also, if you're watching the replay, then you can post it in the comment section, and we will try our best to answer and help you whatever way we can, basically. So hello, high vibrations, how are you doing?
Okay, we are having a mass internet outage right now, so I'm coming in with my phone. I might be sketchy, so.
It's perfectly fine. Like we had like power outages today, twice. So yeah, so if we go offline, then please everyone bear with us. We'll see how it goes. Okay. And also I wanted to mention that anyone who is interested, you can join now our Patreon community. Next week, we're going to have a live channeling event where I'm going to bring forth my guides, and you can ask them questions directly if anyone is interested in that. The links are in the description below. So, okay, so how are you doing, high vibrations?
Great. But I just wanted to say, those Patreon meetings are really cool. It's like an open forum in a lot of situations where you can like just kind of connect and gather with other people that are going through the same thing. And Guardian is really good at guiding a lot of different conversation as well as different healings and stuff that he does. So if you aren't part of that, it's really a useful tool.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and also, yeah, like the channeling sessions are something that is like would be difficult to do on YouTube too. Like it's so awesome. Like so many of us like, can gather. I think it was like 5 of us last time, and you can ask questions from my guides. It was kind of difficult for me the last time because I was only used to doing it with a single person, and like the intention was like waving around multiple peoples at a time. I still have to get used to that. Okay, so have anything to share also regarding the subject or some updates that are happening?
The update stuff is kind of where I've been living in. We're having some things that are really, the energy is kind of culminating right now, which is really cool. I think that some people are finding there's a reason to panic for it, and it's not that. There's no reason. It's beautiful, and I just kind of want to be a reassuring ear for that, or voice for that, that there's some cool energy coming through right now. And as a result, a lot of us are having intensified ascension symptoms and even like fogginess. Just know that you're not alone, and it's okay. It's really cool. It's part of the transition.
Yeah, it's not easy what we're going through, but we're doing it. Like we've been preparing for it for quite some time. And I'm not sure like when we did talk about this whole process of like healing and going through these stuff. Like you have, I don't know, like when you have this, something challenging is happening, you kind of resolve it, then you have like a period of rest for a few days or maybe weeks, then it comes back again and you're doing again something very intense, you resolve it, then you go back to the rest period again. Yeah, like this is how it kind of works. Yeah, like I think we also were like talking about like working through our stuff, and that's kind of how it works. Like you did some healing on something, then it goes away, then it comes back again, and like what the hell is with that? Like haven't I resolved that earlier? And basically they're just like different layers of the same stuff because like we're so multi-dimensional, and also our patterns and karma is so complex that you can't really do it all at once, I think, especially if it's something that goes back like lifetimes, or you have a very deep karma with a person, then you can't really resolve it in just one sitting, or I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I was having a Zoom meeting with some people a little while ago, and a few people have brought up this reference, which I really enjoy. It's like a spiral,
Hmm.
and you start out at the base of this spiral, and as you spiral, you are higher and higher in consciousness, and also are at a different part of this timeline spiral, but you're still interacting with those same points. So this point's here, and as you circle back around, you come back to that point again, but maybe you're at a higher point in a different perspective, and that's another direction that healing needs to go to it too.
Yeah, like Kate said, like it's the ego death too. And yes, the multiple layers of the onion. And Fritzi has just chosen to dig the litter box.
I go.
Okay, it will end soon, I'm sorry. Okay, so also back to our topic on ET contact and trying to give more structure to our live events. Okay, so first off, I wanted to talk about some history of it, like what is ET contact and like since when we were having it, and like in our modern day culture, I think it started mainly across the 50s, where after the Second World War, like that's when it intensified. But if you do some research and can read between the lines, then it was something that always happened. So we are the newcomers here, like ETs have been coming and going here on planet Earth for millions of years, basically. Also, if you like look at cave paintings, you can find like grays and spaceships on cave paintings. And all across art and culture, you can find those same stuff. Just the people like thousands of years ago interpreted the same thing in a different way. Like that's how it made sense to them, basically. And also, if you like,
And early references. Sorry, just really quickly wanted to interject.
Yeah.
Early references of UFOs in cartography, older, really old maps. There's been several depictions of spaceships. Like it's really just everywhere. Go on. I'm sorry. I just wanted to interject.
Like in old cartography, like old maps, like it's not completely unrelated to what we were talking about, but you have these old maps from the Renaissance period and before that. And of course, they were done back then at that period. But if you look back to the source, it's not their research, or they didn't know like how the whole world looked, but they kind of had the sense like how the continents looked. And if you do some research, you can find out that they were actually like copying older and older and older maps. That's how they were like reproducing it. And they were like also depicting Antarctica in the Middle Ages. And they were like putting like mountains there and rivers and forests. And so, yeah, like some time back, people actually explored that. And this is how they remembered it, I guess. Yeah, and also, yeah, if you look back into folklore or legends or art in general, you can find those stuff like the same way with all this occult symbolism. Like if you have already seen the thing and you understand it, like you can recognize it over and over again and very obvious stuff that is in front of you all the time. It's pretty much the same way also with ET contact. Like I had a lot of fun like exploring folklore and legends and weird stuff that people think they're like fairy tales. Like for example, I think in Great Britain they called it a fairy ring that is like light and it takes you to another place. The fairies come and take you to another place. Or like little gnomes, I guess like those were the grays or something. But when you like read the symptoms or the details, is pretty much like an ET abduction.
Right.
Or also the shamanic initiation, that's also pretty much very similar to it too. Like if you do some research on that, basically that's also like an activation type that you're receiving from the guys above.
Right. And also in Irish folklore and history, the Irish people, when the Crusades were occurring, they lived in structures not unlike hobbit holes, and as a result, a lot of the sailing ships on their crusade didn't recognize that the island of Ireland as a inhabited place. It looked vacant, and as a result, a lot of the artifacts of that real deep ancient lore of like the elementals and all these different species didn't get destroyed. And so you can find a lot of interesting history that goes back to easily compared to ET experience to a lot of these stories and folklores that they have.
Yeah, like it's awesome to explore them too, because you like get a different perspective to the whole thing. But mainly we kind of gotten this whole thing started to like come up in during the 50s or after World War II. Theoretically, like many people are talking about, like after they have dropped the first atomic bomb, then ETs got involved even more here, because like, okay, like these kids are having problems and they're gonna like destroy each other and themselves, and we have to do something about it. And that's kind of when they started to show themselves more. But as you do more research on it, like just with everything, like our culture was like not used to it because we had contact with them in antiquity, and like certain people were able to have communications with them, but I bet like even they didn't fully understand like who they were, in my opinion. And so they started to like to drop feed like information in our culture about extraterrestrials and stuff like that's how Star Trek came in and all the science fiction stuff, and yeah, like the whole UFO culture, that's how it started to evolve. And basically it was it was like a project also on their part, so they can get us more used to the whole concept of having extraterrestrial contact, basically.
Right.
Oh, should I continue?
No, yeah, I'm just and then further, you know, it's regional as well. You know, like certain cultures, you know, are obviously more invested in trying to excuse it away, you know, and so a lot of these stories have been kind of misplaced, I guess, as in some kind of way.
Yeah, especially like Christianity, like doesn't want anything to do with these stuff. Although the Pope, I think, declared like years ago that they are going to baptize ETs too, because they're also children of God. First, I thought it was a joke, then I researched it and I find the articles on some kind of Vatican site. So we're making progress on that front too.
That's funny. And then there's also like the more openness of it, you know. I mean, then, you know, the thing is when it started to become talked about more in our modern day culture, and I quote that with the quotations of like a couple 100-year period, you know, through radio and then through, you know, comic books and different types of like fantasy kind of informational documents, I guess, whatever, you know, media. It's been presented, however, it's been presented as a means of or along with in the vessel of fear, in the trying to like plant that seed that you know, if or when you have these experiences, to have fear regarding it. And that is really brilliant, to be honest with you, because you know, love is where we're going to. Love is God. God is nothing but the most purest love, and the opposite of love is fear. And so if the farther you can pull somebody from that love and toward the fear, the more you have at least slowed their awakening process down, you know. And so that's been, I think, probably the most difficult thing is the presentation of half truth in the information regarding ETs and UFOs and so on. They're going to get you and harvest your brain crazy stories, you know.
Like it was very difficult to work through that too. Like I think it took me like years to like deprogram myself from that, because yeah, like, or not just like ETs, but like paranormal stuff in general. Like if weird stuff happens, that's bad. Like that's scary. Yeah, but like Steven Spielberg always had positive movies about ETs. Like all of his movies with extraterrestrials, they're very benevolent beings. But I think like he's the only one.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple of examples slowly coming out. They're still trying, but they're just still going with that same, I can't think of a better word other than to say Hollywood. And that's like a blanket reference for all movies and things like that in my mind. But like to Hollywoodize it by giving it excitement and the climax and, oh no, is he going to survive kind of element that people want to see on the movie, you know? But, you know, for the most part, that's all. And the thing is too, regarding the grays, you know, that's where that lower frequency experience happens, or with through the grays, and those aren't even physical contact in most cases. Those are, you know, like telepathic information being sent to you to encourage that fear that's already been seeded through the media.
Yeah, like also like in the beginning when you're experiencing contact or you're having these weird experiences, they're the first ones usually that come through, like the grays or like some type of lower dimensional beings, because that's what you're closer to. Like I guess for some people, like you can push through that easily or just start on the top. I'm not sure, but in the research that I have done, I'm like Mary Rodwell, she has some awesome hypnotic regression stuff and also older materials. Like many people start with the grays, or they are the most popular thing ever. Also in our culture too, like you have their symbolism everywhere. And they also started it during the 80s, I think. That's when it came into pop culture too. Yeah, and many movies are working on it to make it as scary as possible. And it was very difficult to work through that, at least for me, for some reason. But they are also very, very smart, and they are also working around that. So if you're interacting with other dimensional beings, they don't present themselves as they are, but you have screen memories. Like, for example, that works in a way that, okay, like you're having an experience, but you don't remember it that way it actually happened. So maybe you're having an experience with someone, maybe your friend, and when you remember it, you don't see your friend, you see Winnie the Pooh or something similar. You're interacting with Winnie the Pooh or something, yeah. Or you see a huge cat or owl that, and the time when you're having the experience is completely normal to you, but when you think back at it, you're like, oh my God, like, what was that?
It's usually something that has similar traits in some way, like the owl reference is a common one when it comes to the grays, because the grays do have that, the big
And I
eye.
think in Native American culture, they mostly depict them as owls. Like I've seen like many statues and paintings that are very similar to grays.
And my first interaction personally was not with the grays, but my father, when I was really, really young, introduced that was something that was happening with him. And as a result, I actually didn't realize that anything that wasn't grays were ET related. They were always kind of clumped in some type of, because of how they felt to me. They were more angelic. They were more, you know, involving, you know, God in some way, you know, where that positive, you know, kind of stuff. So I'm one of the few lucky ones, I suppose. But my father definitely had some infiltration with the grays for quite a few years.
Yeah, like they usually come through like if you have some kind of low vibrational experience too. Like have you, I also did some research on Aleister Crowley, like also he did some kind of seances and he like did drawings of the beings that came through in the seances, and it looked very similar to grays. Although like in the 30s, they haven't really had this knowledge of them. So he didn't really draw them as we understand them now, but they look pretty much the same. And I also heard that like also like Eastern cultures or and from Eastern spirituality, like when you meditate or like you're raising your vibration, like those beings can come in to have like contact with you or like to derail you from your enlightenment path or something similar. But the tricky stuff, for example, with the grays is that there are like many types of them. So apparently they can look very similar, but they are not. Like some of them are very robotic, but some of them are actually very evolved spiritual beings, but they look very similar appearance wise. But yeah, like that's when it comes in that your lie detectors and like something can appear a certain way, but like the vibration of it cannot really change. So like a low vibrational being won't be able to radiate that high intensity or higher dimensional energies because it's not of that light, basically.
Exactly. So the image of it is that there's this series of stairs, and the stairs are made of like this cloud light stuff, and you can slow as you work toward a higher vibrational frequency space, you can step up, and then you could, and from that step that you're on, after you've made the work to step up to that, you know, you can step down as many times as you want, and then go back up. It's a little bit, if the farther up the steps that you go, it feels like that you have a current against you, like you're in the river and the water's starting to flow faster. As you go up, if you've just gone really far down, you know. But what's interesting is that once you get to that step that you have succeeded, you can't go any higher until you do the work for it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, like you can't raise your vibration unless you have released fear and all the garbage that is holding you down. And like that takes work. So you can't just voluntarily or just shift your vibration to the higher realms directly. Because you're, like you have stuff that is like holding you back. And especially like many of the regressive ETs, like they're like so far down, like vibrational and like karmically, and that loop that many of them like don't even know like how to get out of it. Although I think in recent years they have been getting out of it, like the ones that wanted to actually progress had the opportunity, and I guess they're doing it right now too, I'm not sure. But I had many experiences with like healings and like giving release to such beings. Like one of them came for me for counseling in the middle of the night. It was very odd. It just happened one time, but it was like very similar to the when you see in movies when you have like a counselor that he sits in the armchair and like the client lays down on that bench stuff, and you're like pouring out their soul to the practitioner. It was very similar to that. It was very strange. It only happened once, but usually it's some kind of energetic healing that they can release or receive, and they release all the baggage and all the stuff that they were like holding them in chains and in that karmic loop for God knows how many generations or lifetimes too. Like, and finally they can get out of it if they want to. And the ones that don't want to get out of it will have to move to another place.
You know, and it's not even, and that's not a wrong choice either. You know, like the choosing one, it's just an experience that isn't fully experienced yet. You know, when those of us who have chosen to stick around and continue the third dimensional experience for a while longer, isn't that person, that individual, that energy made a wrong choice. It's just they're not done yet. You know, and some of us, it only takes one class, and others it takes a whole, you know, year's worth of classes in order to, as a reference, something to gauge that off of, you know. And so if someone has to do summer school, I don't judge them. You know what I mean? It's simply that's just their experience. And that's why all this stuff's coming through about us conveying the message to those who want to hear it. You know, I think that's where that reference in the Bible comes from. For those, it's for those with the ears to hear, you know, and the eyes to see. And it's not that those individuals are not good individuals and doing what they need to do for their mission and their experience. It's simply that they don't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So, you know, work on just being yourself and in your space and do what it is you know is correct. And those who you will activate will come to you. You don't have to do anything about it. What I'm saying is, just because someone's choosing the other way doesn't mean we have to try to talk them out of it. It's not going to do anybody any good. I
think like all of us had to learn that at certain points in our journey. Like you can't save everyone, and you don't even have to. Like just do your stuff, and like people will come to you who need your help. Yeah. That's kind of how it works too. Also with like other dimensional beings as well. Although for some reason they prefer to come during the night, which I don't like. Yeah. Especially if they have like a lot of baggage and they bring it to you during the night, it's very uncomfortable. But yeah, we kind of progressed out of that phase for now. At least I haven't had those experiences for, I think, like 6 months now. Before that, it was pretty occasional too, like people coming during the night, like, hey, like, we need help with this.
Right.
And you're like,
it makes sense that it would be the time that it would happen, because you're at not just are you at rest and you look like you have time, but also all of the much of the world around us is quieted at that time. And so, it's like, I see it like, it looks like a bunch of like lines crossing, like the energies that are crossing from everybody that's awake and they're doing their daily busyness and all this. It looks, it's interference coming through all day long. And then when night happens, that tends to be when everyone quiets down and they're no longer busy. And so all that energy isn't being shot around. So it's you're an easier channel to reach. There's not as much disturbance, and so,
I've seen it, especially in the city, like all the background noise, mind chatter is like subsiding because people are relaxed more. And also they sleep. Right. It's not just like outside much calmer because there isn't traffic, but also like people are calming down too. Especially like I experienced that during the lockdown in 2020. Like everything was just so calm, like you had like deers in the streets and the animals were coming back to the city. It was a very strange sight and energy during that time. And for a month, it was very pleasant because I was able to rest more than I did, like, I think in the past few years.
Everything
became boring, yeah.
And there were a lot of examples all over the world of like people seeing all kinds of crazy wild animals coming out. It was very much like that movie 12 Monkeys, when all the animals were released from the zoo, where like these different, and then some of them were within the zoo. They were just releasing animals, letting the penguins walk around, go watch movies and stuff and eat popcorn.
Yeah, like probably the animals were like, hey, all the people are gone.
Hooray!
Yeah.
Someone was saying that they were reporting seeing dolphins in, like, I don't know a lot about the waterways east of this, but back on the East Coast, there was some like Hudson Bay or something like that, a really strange place to see any life. And I guess there were dolphins, they're like swimming around over there. They were like, yay, no one's coming.
They haven't been there for 100 years or so.
But
yeah,
and the thing I wanted to say, if you don't mind, is that a lot of us have these great experiences most of the time after we've already started to reach out and have some kind of, whether you know it or not, connection with a more angelic like species, and that interception of the grays coming in and trying to, it's again pulling you down or attempting to pull you back toward a lower frequency space. It's not something that's to be, it's hard to say don't be afraid when it's something that seems scary, but you're really fine. It's all a design, it's all an act. And so if you can not buy into it and just keep putting your energy toward the light, putting out the love, then it pulls in and invites in these other wonderful energies. Like my biggest, most profound experience was with the Pleiadians when I was like 13, and they were coming in and doing these healings on me, these transmutations. And I didn't know what they were. I called them the elf people, and like, because they very much resemble elf to a child, like, and they felt like I thought elf would feel, that just harmony and love and living in cooperation and partnership with everything around them. There was no disturbance that was required. They just moved along like a flowing energy. And so they were elven to me. And I didn't know that was an alien thing.
Yeah, like you interpreted the way you could understand it back then, just like with people like hundreds or thousands of years ago. They interpreted as they could back then too. Yeah, and like you were talking about, like, I also had this period, I think, like in 2013, like after a year of having experiences, when I received also very much both. Like I had this very high vibrational angelic experiences with them too. And also the others tried to come in to like to drag me back to the lower dimensional part too. And as I was like doing healing on myself and like progressing towards the higher realms, basically, like when the lower ones tried to come in, like it was like very odd, like there was like interference, or like they couldn't like connect to me anymore. They were like trying to come in, but there wasn't any connection, and I was just getting like fragments of them or something similar. And I got like the download, like, okay, like you're tuning out to their frequency and like they can't touch you anymore because you're moving out of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but when you're having those scary experiences, like you have your guides and you can connect with your angels, like ask for Archangel Michael's assistance or the ascended masters that you're working with to like remove any and all interference or intruders, because you don't have to suffer through it. Like you don't have to have those scary experiences, except if you enjoy them. Yeah, like you can say no and remove them. Like it's your experience and you don't have to go through it if you don't want to.
Right. Exactly. You know, and for those of us who have, most of us have been brought up in a religious background. And I only bring this up because there are some useful things that are found in that. The name of God or of Jesus or Yahushua or however you want to say it is a frequency and a resonance of love, you know, and using those names are also useful. You know, I know growing up, there was something that we would say in Jesus's name, you know, I banish you kind of thing. And you don't have to use any kind of specific words. It's simply what your intention is, you know, like you can, as long as you know what the words are, you can make up a language and it'll still be just as useful. It's the intention that you're projecting to it and saying, I am a powerful, sovereign, authentic being of light. And that I am declaring my own sovereignty and you can't touch me, you know, and when you do that, like that's all it takes. You know, you are then in your own sovereignty and your free soul, you know, and acknowledging that prevents a lot of interaction with unpleasant beings.
Yeah, I also add to that, like that's awesome to start. And then you declare that I banish I declare that everyone who is not of the higher light of the highest good leave now, or like any self-serving energies to leave, to close all portals, gateways, and doorways through which my energies can be observed or manipulated. And yeah, like declare your sovereignty. And also, yeah, like always ask for Archangel Michael's assistance. Like he's the ultimate protection guide or force in the cosmos. So yeah, like ask for his protection. It's like best thing ever. Like I asked for his help in the past 2 or 3 years since we made contact to remove like intruders. Like if you ask for him, then he may not necessarily come in directly, or like he sends. Sometimes I see like light beings come in into our fields and like they take it away, like almost like cops coming in and like arresting the crooks and taking them away somewhere. But after that, you don't see them anymore because like they can't mess with those higher vibrational energies because it's like far beyond their reach and also understanding.
Right. And that kind of segues into another point that I maybe should be addressed that just came into my mind is that a lot of the things that we do can be worded in a way that would seem like anybody's welcome to participate, you know, and so I always will say if it is for my highest good, you know, and like in some wording in some way, usually you know, the energies that are those energies that are for my highest good are welcome, or, you know, those who are not for my highest good must flee, you know, and like, and to say it in some way that in that moment is correct for you. It doesn't have to be a specific wording either, just as long as it feels like you're authentic you. That's the most important part in that. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is kind of it segues into this other part that a lot of us have talked about over the past few years, specifically lately, is this thing about the implants, and like a lot of us, I would be surprised if a person didn't have some type of implant. The thing is that some of these implants are for our highest good and some are not, and it's so easy to do that all you have to do is declare that those implants that are not for my highest good are not welcome. They will be deactivated. They will leave my system now. And like those that are useful for you can then continue to help you on your ascension experience, and like that. I know Guardian has a better wording for that. I don't usually use words. I just kind of send out my little parcel of information to the universe when I'm doing it. And sometimes there's like one or two words that come out of my mouth, but you were saying we were talking about this a little while ago, and you had talked about your contract removal stuff and that there was a better way of wording that. But if you wouldn't mind, what's the best way to word that again?
What, the contract removal stuff?
Using the contract removal jargon in order to declare that you will not be willing to have these implants used in your system any longer.
How would I word that? Yeah, like I will probably write it down too. Like if anyone's interested, like research or find through Google, spiritual contract removal. It's from the Galactic Historian. Like he has his site, and it's like an awesome resource. And he has like 5 of them for the banking system, the media system, for divine masculine, divine feminine, and I think for government too. But basically, they all have the same template, and it's like all inclusive for everything. And you can like change it for your own stuff too. So it's not written in stone. You can make your own formula out of that too. But basically how it works is, like you center yourself in your heart, like that's your source creative energy, like that's your center of power. And you call all upon your guides or whom you're working with all the angels, archangels, like call upon Earth Mother, the divine feminine, the Heavenly Father, the divine masculine, like united together. And basically it starts with creating this spiritual court of equality, where like, and all your ancestors too, like all timelines and all your incarnations to be present, hold space, and to not clarify, but to take into register or like to hold up the law or your statement that you're doing at that time. So like they honor it and they uphold it too. So it's not just like a little thing that you're doing on your own, like your personality or ego mind part. It's like all encompassing in all directions. And from that sacred space, you declare your own sovereignty basically. And those contracts go into very much detail in each case. For example, it mostly relates to like energy harvesting, like for example, the media or the banking system, like how there are like many, many, many very subtle ways that you didn't even know of, that you have like these unspoken or unnoticed agreements with them through which they're able to harvest your energy or use your life force to channel it into something different. And you're like consciously declaring it, like I am like renouncing all those contracts, like all the fine print information, and I'm declaring my sovereignty. Like how did they phrase it? I don't remember exactly. Yeah, but basically you declare your own sovereignty and you like null out every kind of connection to them. Like you revoke your energy, you ask for all your parts, all your energy to come back to you. Like you don't leave it there with them. Everything comes back to me. Everything that was fractured through trauma or energy harvesting comes back and reintegrates. And I own my own gifts, my own abilities, my memories, because we also lost a lot of information too. And like declared for everything to come back. And I also like think the implants are, when you have these contracts, you also probably get those implants too, to a certain extent, because that's also part of the energy harvesting stuff, kind of. Like, I don't know about physical implants. Like I know during the 80s and 90s, it was like a very big thing or something. But I haven't really gone into that. Like, I don't know, probably some people have it. Maybe some of it was like not even ET, but military. I don't know. But we were talking about the energetic stuff like that you can do on your own too. And even if you have like, I bet like if you have something physical in your body, like you can knock it out probably energetically too.
Right.
Or you call in some beings that knock it out too. And as you were saying with the implant stuff, like you're declaring it like you don't want it any longer in your body or in your field, because many of it is like attached to our etheric field or like to your energy centers. There's like something extra on it that is like harvesting it or like keeping it down so it cannot heal properly.
Right.
Yeah, like you're declaring that you want to remove that, and that can take form in a way that like beings can come in or do it for you, like some of them with whom you are working with, or some beings that are close to you will come in and like do that stuff for you. Like that's how it manifests usually. I had that too. I think like it was an Ari Kolpo's channel. Like she was talking about some kind of new implants that were like in this region, and I was also feeling that for quite some time. And just as a test, like I did a meditation, and I asked for it to be removed. And at that time, I was connecting very much with Mother Mary. And I was sitting, and she appeared in front of me in all blue. She put both her hands on my and the sides of my head, and I took it out, and like, oh my god, like it was like someone like put electricity through my spine. I like jumped up from the seat. It was very abrupt and unexpected. Yeah, but it got out. But yeah, like after that, you have to heal it too, because
Yes.
you leave a space there in your energetic field, and like it can come back too, like, or something else can come to that space too. That's why you have to need your field to be whole. That's why you need your shield to be healed and like perfectly integrated, because like the more tears or holes you have in your field, the more stuff can come in. It's like you're not protecting yourself from the rain or dirt or whatever wants to come through.
Exactly. And send love to it. Like the light goes in there, and it, when we have those openings, it's good. The thing is these openings, these spaces are being made for us. We're removing these things that have been there for who knows how long, and it's making space. It's making room for this light to go in. And the experience that I had, just very briefly, I did this like just declaring my own sovereignty, and any implants that are not of my highest good, I demand that you deactivate and leave my body. And within like a few hour period, I started noticing it more the next day, but there were different weird points on my body that these like biological looking, almost the size of a grain of rice, were like popping out of my body. It was really weird. Like strange, places where you wouldn't even think, like I had one on each of my wrists, that popped out, and like it was just so weird. But and I did it in that way because I had heard about the fact that there are also ones that were there for our highest good, and the point in bringing all this up is that we're all empowered beings. We all have the decision. We get to make that choice. We just simply by declaring, like we've been kind of brought up or conditioned in a society that's taught us wishy-washy thinking, and that's made it so we've not decided, feeling like maybe you're more of a victim of circumstance versus not having that power of choice. And all you have to do is raise your vibration. And the way you do that is with love. That the closer to love that you can get, the closer to love. However, before that can happen, a forgiveness needs to occur, a forgiveness of self as well as those around us, but particularly of self. That's what I found anyway. And
like that's the key to many things, or like many people don't even think of that you have to forgive yourself too.
Exactly. And a lot of these experiences that I've had with ETs have been about healing those things. It's not been like, you know, meant to be a story to tell or like something weird that happened. Really, it's been they've shown up to help at certain times, you know. And like a little while ago, I had a new experience with 3 individuals that I saw as I woke up seeing them come in my room. And then they had this cool electric that one in front held up his 4-fingered hand with something, and from his palm created this pyramid of light from the corners of my eye and the above my eyebrow. And then I was able to see as the electricity went through my brain, and I watched it break off stuff, you know, like I was the calcification or some kind of weird crusty stuff. And as a result, then my body got rid of that stuff the next day in a very gross way. But they come and they help us. They come to bring us something in most cases, you know, especially if you are in that space where you're able to work on that meditation with yourself every day and to get to that higher vibrational frequency, then that's who you're inviting, you know. And that's really what the point I wanted to make is the empowerment of it, is that we're not victims.
Yeah, we just been conditioned all our lives that we are, as you have said, like a victim of circumstance, like we don't have any choice in what's happening. We just, stuff happens to us. Yeah, like that's part of what we have to work through each day, so we can like deprogram ourselves from that. It's not very easy, but yeah, like it takes effort, and each day you can go through it more. And yeah, like what I also wanted to address with the old ET stuff, like we were talking about the negative stuff too, but like what happens when the higher vibrationals come in, like that's also very interesting.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I also started with the high vibrationals were the Pleiadians or some kind of Nordic type of beings, but I think they were the Pleiadians, or that's how I interpreted it, but I'd never seen them. So that's also very interesting that, for example, like lower vibrational beings tend to like show themselves in certain ways or like pose as something they are not. But like your guides or like high vibrational beings, like they don't have this need to present themselves to you. Like they can send you the information or you can sense their presence, but like they don't want to like disturb or intrude upon you or anything like that. But if you want to interact with them, they're kind of there.
Yeah.
Like the only time I've seen them is like during hypnotic regression, when I was like actually going back to the experience and like seeing them. But yeah, like I always recognize them through their vibration and the feeling that I had inside my body too, which is very overwhelming and emotional and like super intense too. But the interesting thing that they never really came in, like only when I had like very big problems. Like they were the help team, like, or the specialists that like come up and like put me back on my feet. Like that's the only time I've sensed them coming in very, very strongly, or when something very I know, like life-changing happens and like they're there to support me with it or like to guide me in the right direction. Like that's the only time I've ever noticed them. And other than that, I kind of only had like the teachers, but they tend to feel more neutral, like more the observers, and like they impart information rather than try to do anything very emotional or dramatic with you. And that's kind of what I've been exploring for the past few years, these teachers and like connecting with other lives of mine when I did that stuff too, and like bringing it back here now. That's kind of what I've been working with mostly. Oh yeah, like the stuff that I wanted to share, like people, like also if I didn't know better, I would think like for some of them that they are like angels. Because like I think like also through our culture and even now I think like many people who think that they have contact with angels actually have contact with higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings. Because yeah, like some of them, as you have said with the Pleiadians, like they do appear as this perfect or idolized radiating human being, and that's how we depict angels too, kind of in our culture. we humanize them very much. Also, we give them wings too, but
yeah, I have the same problem. Like, because of that, I think it's due to the experience with my father, and like that was what the Greys are aliens and everybody else is angelic. Like I had the same experience. Everybody I interacted with were angelic. There's something that else too to say that if there's an experience that you're not sure, like, you know, some of us, because we've been given so much baggage of fear involving these cool experiences, these helpful, loving, amazing experiences, that still triggers itself like on occasion, and so sometimes we don't know what we're experiencing, if it's good or not. And there are a bunch of different tools that can be helpful or useful for you in those moments. But the two that I really would say is, well, first off, you can say, if you don't feel okay about that, you can say, you do not have permission to interact with me, or you do not have my permission to touch me or interfere with me, or whatever it is that feels correct wording for you. But then also, the one thing that I have found to be so useful is to send love to it. When I send love to something, if it is of love, it always answers back with love, and often stronger than the love that I sent in the beginning. Though if it is not of love, or not there for my highest good, it usually will flee immediately. It will not be able to answer back with love, and it won't, and that experience, that energy cannot exist in the same place as that higher frequency energy of love. The shadow cannot stand before the light. And it almost makes it be like that Harry Potter disapparation, like, you know, like they're just gone, you know. And like, it works for people too. You know, a lot of people in our experience have kind of connections with less than positive experience going on, you know, and some of those are kind of individuals that are easily suggestive, and so they maybe be behaving in a way that is not of love, and that works for those people too. You send love to them, and if they are in that space, they cannot stay in that space. It's like they're confused, and like it's uncomfortable for them, so they just take off, you know. And what's fun about that is usually down the road you hear about them having met up with another light warrior, and that person has brought them and away from that darkness. That was kind of cool. But yeah, and just send out love to it and say, you do not have my permission.
Yeah, but that's kind of difficult, especially in the beginning when you're like very scared. It's very difficult to send love in that state.
Fire.
Yeah, but in that state, when you're scared, like you declare your stuff, that's absolutely something that you can do. And that also works too. Like I use it many times, like, okay, like you don't have my permission to be here, like please leave. And they usually leave out of there too. And yeah, like we also mentioned the mantra, the Kadosh, 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 Adonai Sebaoth mantra. Like that's super useful, especially if you are in that very fearful state, or yeah, like whatever, you're like woken up in the middle of the night and you're like super dazed and you don't know what's happening. You can't really call in those super high vibrational energies, especially if you're not in that phase of your awakening process. And that's like a super way to do that with something very tangible, like you uttering these mantras. They're like super strong in those situations. We will also post it in the description, a link to it too, so you can listen to it, because like that like tunes you to the higher realms, and also like it calls in your light team, and like they clean stuff up. Like kind of that mantra is like also like a call for help, but you can use it during meditation too to raise your vibration. But if you do that, you're calling in the cavalry basically to remove everything that is not of that higher vibrational light.
And the same energy is sent out when you do that as again, going back to the religious background. The same energy is sent out that you send out when you're doing saying in Jesus' name too, or something like that. The point is you're sending out a love frequency, and it's like you said, you're calling for help. You know, the the cool thing about this experience is we're governed by this law of free will, and all of these archangels and other angelic or assisting energies that are all around us at all times, they are there for our assistance. They want to be of assistance. They want to help, but you got to ask, you got to give permission, and like, in some cases they'll step in without permission because it's just that one of those situations. But for the most part, they will stand back until you ask, because they're not going to interfere needlessly in your experience. That's part of the rule, and so, but once you ask for help, they are there, like, oh, like you said, a Calvary, like, and they're just quick to make the situation immediately better again. All you got to do is ask.
Yeah, I had a few of those too, especially in the beginning. Like I had like sleep paralysis in the beginning phases, and I called upon help, and yeah, in just a matter of seconds, like just the whole thing stopped. I got like a release from that tension. I could move, and in a few minutes I like calmed down completely and I was back to sleep.
Right.
Yeah, like we have to ask for it too. And also like the interesting stuff about like they're not interfering when like something big is happening, like coming in like saving you without your permission basically, but they are there to make sure that everything that needs to happen to you happens, and like everything that doesn't needs to happen to won't happen. And I think like usually when those stuff happen, you don't notice it at that time. So it's kind of in the background for you, but later on you can like recognize that, holy shit, like, yeah, I just missed that occasion when I almost got hit by a truck, but I didn't, or something like that.
And that's where you hear all those stories of God was there, someone was watching out for me, and my angels, or, it's all of those things. They all, yes, 100%.
Yeah,
And
like
if you get that feeling, you listen to your instinct. That's another thing. Those instincts are also those messages, like
that's how we communicate with you, basically.
And that there's been a handful of times, many times, I can't count how many times, where I, for some reason, felt like maybe I shouldn't go where I was gonna go just yet, or something strange happened. Like, for some reason, an object that was needed and I took with me every time I left the house was not in the same place it always is every single day. That it delayed my departure by 5 minutes, and then get to that point of the street and there's this massive pile up of cars, and like that I would have been in.
Yeah.
And just a lot of experiences like that, stories like that. It's like, or I would have missed something. Yeah. Anyway, just listen to your instinct. There's, like you said, there's always messages coming in and out, back and forth. Communication is a constant. We just don't always know that's what it is.
Yeah, we choose to ignore it many times too.
Mm-hmm.
And related to that, like I also heard something very interesting, like many years ago, like with occasions when you actually die, and on the other side, you can still choose like, okay, like you reflect on what you have done so far, and do you still want to go back? Don't want to go back? And then you can choose to go back if you want to. And in your mind, or in your conscious mind, how the whole thing plays out is that you, some strange way, you made it out of that situation. But that's all you remember, and you like go back and you find it out like, oh, like you actually died and you chose to come back.
Right.
But in your conscious mind, that's the memory that you have, that you somehow made it out of it live somehow. Because yeah, like I think many of us would not be like able to comprehend that experience, or it would be like too overwhelming. So yeah, like also higher vibrational beings, that's how they do many stuff. Like they don't come in all out with their energy because it would be too much for us to handle. And yeah, like they, yeah, like screen memory, people think like it's a bad thing too, because like you don't remember what actually happened, but sometimes that's like a positive thing too. Like your conscious mind like wouldn't be able to comprehend or deal with what actually happened, and the experience is still there, but this is the best way you can digest it at that time during your evolution. And maybe later on you can like take the curtains off and look at the real thing later on.
As you spiral up and come back to that situation again, you can look at it with a more higher understanding and wider perspective, and therefore understand it more completely, for sure. You know, I actually had a near-death experience when I was 4, and I remember that interaction very clearly. And that is why I feel like I've always felt uniquely lucky, because I've never had a reason to wonder, because a lot of people wonder if God exists or some kind of higher power. It's never been a question for me, because I had that interaction like at that young age, like, yeah, that's true, you know. But yeah, just like, but I remember that whole exchange, and that the original plan was that I would be going, and then I'd come back to a different life. I still remember a little bit of what that life was going to be like too. And but I was going to be born again in like 4 or 5 more years from that time, and instead I made the decision to stick around. But it was like, the cool part about it was as if I just finished the really old arcade version of the first level of Donkey Kong, and then they're like, hey, do you want to go and try to beat the most complicated game known to man in the technology of the year 3000, you know, whatever. And yeah, sure, let's try it. You know, and like, I understand it now, and I get it. But the reason I say that is that some people do have the memory of it. It's really strange, I guess. I didn't realize that was this uncommon thing to be able to remember the dying process and the whole interaction. But yeah.
Yeah, it can be
That was a
like
ramble.
like a super life-changing event too. Like I remember, I know, like if anyone knows, like James Gilliland, like he has the ESETI Ranch with, and he like organizes like contact groups with ETs. And I remember like one interview, he was like explaining his near-death experience. Like in the 70s, he was this like super materialistic guy, and he had like a surf accident where he almost drowned, but didn't. And during the dying process, he like came to this huge light, which he interpreted as God, or the Father God. And like he was reflecting on his life, and I think he received the information that if you want, you can go back and like continue it. Same thing too. And like, okay, but he asked, like, okay, but what should I do? And the answer was like so awesome. You were like, hey, like what brings you the most joy? Like you should be doing that.
Exactly. And that's what our mission is we're here to bring up the vibrational frequency of the space that we're in. And how is that done? Everybody's different. Wherever you feel that you're in a place of play. When you're playing like a child, some children like to play in the sand. Some children like to build. Some children, you know, everybody has a place of joy. And if you can go to that place, then you're doing your mission. You do your mission naturally. I used to think that we were supposed to, if you're doing spiritual work, you know, or you're helping your fellow person, that the requirement is it has to be hard. It has to be unpleasant. It has to be sacrificing in some way. You're doing without something that you need for yourself in order to be a truly spiritual experience. And that's not true. In fact, if we're taking care of ourselves, the things that need to be cared for around us happen naturally without effort almost.
Absolutely. I also want to share with Jasmina. Oh, yes, Jasmina, you're awesome. You're an awesome duo, Zoltan. Thank you. We're awesome. Also, thank you for everyone for joining us. Like in closing, do you want to share anything, higher vibrations?
I'll do another announcement that we're having a Zoom meeting tomorrow. It's free for anybody who wants to join. I'm sorry I haven't been able to watch anybody's comments, so I've been on my phone instead of on the computer. But hello, everybody that's here. And yeah, so tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there's a short on my channel with the link in there, so you can link to it if you'd like. It's free, and it's just a bunch of light warriors gathering together.
Yeah, I also like your name very much. Very
Was that?
I also like your name very much, the Light Warriors group.
Yeah. That feels so like it resonates more. I remember being a child telling people that I was one of God's soldiers, and they'd look at me like I was crazy. But I just knew that was true. And we are all God's soldiers, you know? We are in one way or another. It's beautiful. Oh, also in those Zoom meetings, we're starting to do these breakout rooms where we're having a men's group for men to gather and kind of
groups. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a divine masculine space where the men can gather and have their own conversation with each other. So if you're interested, please join us.
Yeah, please do. Like, I haven't attended yet, but I hope I will have time in the near future because I want to communicate with other guys too. Okay, so thank you, High Vibrations, for joining us, and also lots of love to everyone who has joined us. And everyone have a good night's sleep after this. Okay. Your protection and your boundaries, and have a good night's sleep.